Do you ever feel like your mind just draws a blank whenever you try talking to a native speaker, even though you already know tons of vocab and grammar? It can really be demoralizing if you think you've done all this work and then just to realize you can't use it when you're trying to speak, you could think you're dumb or you're just not a good student. But it turns out it could not be you. It could simply be your body trying to protect you from a perceived threat. My name is Maxwell. I'm a licensed mental health therapist, and for the past few years, I've had a real keen interest in anxiety, foreign language learning, and how those two kind of intersect and how anxiety impacts the language learning process. So this video, we're going to talk about the basics of why anxiety impacts that learning, or especially why it impacts the communication aspect when you're trying to use a foreign language. With that said, everything in this video is meant for education and information purpose only designed to develop the skill of learning a foreign language. Don't ignore any advice from a mental health professional or a physician because you hear something in this video. And as always, if you're experiencing a mental health emergency, contact 911, go to your nearest hospital, and watching this video does not create a client-therapist relationship. So first, let's take a look at anxiety in general in foreign language. It's been present in this area for about 50 years. It's been studied. And around the 1970-80, Stephen Krashen created what he called the affective filter hypothesis, which he essentially says the affective filter contains anxiety, negative emotions, and anything that could impact someone from naturally acquiring a second language. And he calls the filter, it's really raised and high, or it's really low. And he says in children, affective filter tends to be really low, which is why they're able to acquire a second language pretty naturally. As an adult, the affective filter tends to be really high, which is why it makes it really hard for us to acquire a language and why a lot of adults tend to have to learn a language, which is really this effortful, purposeful learning process as opposed to naturally acquiring the same way a child learns. So a lot of creators obviously talk about we want to lower this, just by embracing the mistakes, just having confidence and going for it. But you don't really know the biology behind the anxiety of why anxiety impacts it. And so the easy way to understand this is to think about working memory. So we have short-term memory, and then working memory is a part of that short-term memory and really where you are processing information that's being input or processing your thoughts so that you can output it. And according to research, we tend to hold about 3 to 5 bits of information in our working memory. Now, if you have a worry or if your mind is detected a perceived threat, one, your brain's going to go immediately to that threat because that's going to be the priority. It's trying to protect you. And two, it's taken up a bit of that working memory because it is at the front of your mind. And if you're only able to hold 3 bits of information, that takes up 33% of your cognitive capacity. Even if you can hold 5 bits of information, that holds up to 20% of your cognitive capacity. So with that said, if you feel anxious, if you feel worried, it's not because you're a bad student. It's simply because your body is perceiving something as dangerous. And this is a very good thing for us as humans because technically, 10,000 years ago, this response system is what kept us alive to where we're alive today. If our ancestors detected a threat, our brain was priming that so that it was at the forefront of our brain, and so we were trying to deal with that threat. The problem is, today we have that same stress response, that same fight-flight response, and civilization has advanced so rapidly the past 100, 200 years, the biology hasn't had a chance to catch up, which is why today, arguably, when we're in the safest moment of our civilization, we're in air-conditioned rooms, we don't have beasts wandering around, we don't have to worry about the elements of the wild. The body doesn't know that what it deems dangerous is really a life or death situation. In case in point, one of those things that it detected 10,000 years ago is whether we were liked, right? We needed to be socially accepted by others so that we were able to band together as a tribe. That is how we survived against all of the craziness of the wild back then. Nowadays, we have a lot more safety. If one person doesn't like us, there's hundreds of other people that we can talk to. It doesn't necessarily mean that we're going to get kicked out and have to fend for ourselves. And so to further explain why we naturally think of a threat, first and foremost, whenever it comes into our brain, imagine our ancestor 10,000 years ago, right? They're walking down a path and they see in front of them a bush with a berry tree. And they're like, dang, I like those berries. I know they're delicious. I know they're safe, so I'm going to go to those berries. So they walk to the berries. As they walk to the berries, the bush next to them starts to rustle a little bit, right? Maybe they see some beady eyes. Maybe they hear a growl. Now they got two arguments in their head. They got one argument that says, I want to eat those berries. And now they got another argument that says, I don't want to get too close to that bush because I could get hurt. I could get killed. Which argument do they listen to? Well, we want to believe that they listen to the negative argument, because if they listen to that positive argument, we probably wouldn't be here. They probably would have died. So they're naturally predisposed, and we're naturally predisposed to listen to some of this anxiety. And that's why a lot of times it could be really hard to kind of block that out of our heads. Not only that, but think about this. When you use your native language, you have such a second-hand nature to it that it's so easy for you to use. Not only are you trying to handle the threat that's inside of your working memory, but you're also trying to learn the skill of your foreign language. You're trying to relearn how to formulate your ideas in a different way with a different phonemes, to express to another person. Your brain could easily get overwhelmed if there is a threat just living in your head. And so here's a simple exercise that you can practice to help lower that affective filter. A lot of times the fight-flight response lives in our body. So breathing is one of the few things that we can do to help regulate that fight-flight system. So a lot of people suggest a box breathing technique, which is you inhale for 4, you hold for 4, you exhale for 4, you hold for 4, and then you just repeat. It's a very good regulation technique. I sometimes like, for my own experience, a 4-5-6, where you inhale for 4, hold for 5, and you exhale for 6, because the inhale is connected to that fight-flight response, that activation. The exhale is connected to that relaxation, the rest and digest response. So as long as your exhale is longer than your inhale, you're activating that relaxation response more than the activation response. So keep that in your back pocket before you engage in practicing your foreign language, and hopefully that helps regulate your fight-flight system and lower that affective filter for you. Another thing you can think about is practice in a more low-stakes environment. Sometimes practicing with the native speaker, we can interpret that as a high-stakes environment. So, finding a time to work with a tutor, finding time to work with a trusted friend can help lower the stakes and make it feel more comfortable that you're allowed to make mistakes, that it's okay to try using something differently, to try formulating your ideas. And so if this is something that interests you, let me know in the comments below what questions you have. I'll try to answer them, or maybe they'll generate a new idea for another video. And you could subscribe to let me know that you're interested in this. Thanks for watching. I hope to see you in the next one.